Hi, and welcome to my session, The 5 Pillars of Collaborative Product Ownership. So my name's John LeDrew, and I've been in the software industry now for about 20 years. And in that time, I have done many different things. Been a software engineer, a team lead, a technical lead, architect, development manager, tester, business analyst, project manager, and for my sins, even a product owner. So at this point, and this is the fun thing of trying to translate things to online talks, I'd normally give all of the product owners in the audience a little gift, specifically some stickers, because everyone loves stickers. Only these stickers say are labeling the product owners with some of the things that people might have heard the product owners be called. That is that what we have are things like the single wringable neck, the one throat to choke, the one person that gets fired if the project goes wrong. And I have a lot of issues with the language that we use to talk about product owners. Because I don't know, but I reckon most product owners don't really like having the title, the single wringable neck. So what's interesting about that is that particular phrase. I imagine that's one that many of you will be familiar with. And people wonder where these phrases come from. Well, that particular phrase was actually coined by Jeff Sutherland in the book that introduced Scrum, which I find an interesting thing when we think about, he also created the product owner role. So I think there's an interesting question. When I ask the audience at this point and they say, well, what does this actually mean? What does single wringable neck mean? Why might it be valuable potentially? And what you have is a lot of people talking about, well, it's so important to have a single point of accountability. Well, I find that an interesting challenge, really. Why is a single point of accountability really important? Well, is it because we think that people won't step up if there isn't? Do we need one person to be beating everyone with? A common one is that we don't want the engineers to be distracted with all of the questions from the customers. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to just, get their head down in their dark little room and focus on the things they need to do. So we give that job to the product owner. But then there's this other problem, isn't there? So the product owner is also going to be the central focal point of all the kind of business knowledge, potentially like an SME. But as engineers, I think most organizations have recognized that it's a pretty dangerous thing to have all of your technical knowledge for a key subsystem in one person's head. But apparently that's fine for a product owner. I don't know. To me, this all seems a little bit sketchy. So what makes a great product owner? At this point, I'd love to have a go. I don't know if people are on the Zoom call, but if there are people on the Zoom call, what would be awesome is if people could unmute themselves maybe and shout out just one word to tell me what they think makes a great product owner. If there's no one there, I'll have to fill in. Anyone have any ideas? No? No one know what a good product owner is? All right, that's fine. So words that normally come up here. things that we normally hear, we will hear things like available. This is a really good one. What makes something available? Well, why is availability of a product owner really important? Well, this is what happens. What tends to happen on teams is you're working away as your team, and then suddenly you get stuck because you don't know the answer to some question that you need from the customer. And at that point, you might go to the product owner and say, I don't know, should this look like this or this? Should this button be green or hot pink? And the product owner might be sat with you. It's a common trope of XP and Scrum teams to have it's product owners sitting with the team. And that technically means that availability, that time is zero. Perfect. Or you could have the product owner maybe in the next room. Well, at that point, you're going to have to get up and walk through. Maybe they're not there. Maybe that chat gets a bit more. Well, that availability is a little bit longer. That lead time to getting that answer is a bit longer. And then even worse, maybe that product owner is in the next building. And what's more, they're split between 3 other teams. And maybe the lead time that they can get you that answer is in fact days. Well, what happens to teams then? Well, what happens is that the teams go, okay, well, I was working on A, but I can't finish A now because I don't know whether or not he wants a hot pink button. So I'm just going to start on B. We'll just park that for now. It's fine. It's in a branch. It'll all be okay. Git will help us merge it later. Then we go to B and we start on B. But then obviously product owner is still not back from his holiday. So now I'm stuck again because I have another question. So but that's okay. I can just park that. And then I start on C and that keeps going. And I've seen that many, many times. So the problem is that availability is a core one. The other side of things that we hear are things like inspirational, being able to be the inspirational leader for the team. Well, I'm not sure about that. I think that can be valuable, but I think that the team can share that inspiration around a little bit more. Okay, so inspirational, available. These are some of the things we hear frequently. We also have other things like being able to be decisive, being able to make all of those decisions, like, is this going to be a blue or a hot pink button? And it's important to be able to do that, to be really kind of clear. An important thing that is tied to being decisive is it's often not just being decisive in many organizations. Actually, what it often is also being empowered, actually having the power to make that decision. So I once worked on a project where there were many, many stakeholders, but all of these stakeholders were in positions of seniority to the product owner on the team. And as a result, what that really meant is that this person, in order to make pretty much any decision on the project whatsoever, had to get sign off from 20 separate individuals, all of which had strong opinions about what color buttons should be. Then there was the other side of this, which just compounded the problem, that each of those 20 individuals was split across 5 time zones, I think, if I remember correctly, which clearly caused a lot of issues on the project. So availability and actually being empowered, the product owner needs to, in fact, own the product, which means they can take independent decisions on the direction of the project in order to be able to move things along. It's all very well that they can be decisive, but actually if they're not empowered and they can't they're not empowered to make those decisions, then all they're really doing is middle management, just forwarding things around. So decisive, available, empowered, inspirational. These are all lovely things, but a lot of the time, this seems like a bit of a fantasy. Rarely, when we put all of the attributes of the product owner we would love to have many people actually had the experience of working with that product owner. And that's a sad truth. They seem to be a little hard to find. So let's have a look at the official definition of product owner. This is from the Agile Alliance and was up to date as of a few weeks ago. I don't think it's changed much recently. So the product owner is a role on the product development team responsible for managing the product backlog in order to achieve the desired outcome that a product development team seeks to accomplish. So I really like this definition as it's at a starting point. It's kind of nice. You've got the product owner is a role on the product development team. They don't own the product development team. And they're responsible for managing the product backlog, fine, in order to achieve the desired outcome that a product development team seeks to accomplish. Now, what I like about this is that the product owner is a member on the product development team, but the whole team desires a particular outcome and seeks to achieve that. And the product owner collaboratively with the team is helping the team to accomplish that goal by managing their role in that is to help manage this product backlog. So what I really like about that is that they are seems like a very collaborative position. So what's interesting here is that this particular definition on the Agile Alliance page that I nabbed it from, it has separate bullet points. And these bullet points kind of go to, I think, attempt maybe to clarify the position of product owner. But, well, we'll see what happens here. So the second bullet point is clearly identify and describe the product backlog items in order to build a shared understanding of the problem and solution with the product development team. Well, I've got some issues with this because it seems to me by this definition that the PO is responsible for identifying all the problems and then defining the problems and then solving the problems and then communicating the problem and solution to the team, which I guess at that point, the team, I don't know, go to the pub because the problem is apparently solved. Yeah, I have some issues with that definition for obvious reasons. But seriously, the main problem I have with this definition is the word solution. The problem I have is that we don't build a shared understanding of a solution. We build the solution. The problem isn't solved until it's solved. You don't, and we should avoid using the word solution until it's actually solved. It is not solved if it is currently on a whiteboard, unless the solution is in fact a whiteboard. You know, an architectural plan of how we're going to design the class structure for this particular thing is not the solution. It is just an idea, an experiment, a potential direction. Solution is something that you get to. It isn't something that you start with. So next little bullet point, make decisions regarding the priority of product backlog items in order to deliver the maximum outcome with the minimum output. So I used to think that maximum outcome with minimum output was kind of hilarious and sounded like something that Schwarzenegger would say, maximum outcome. But I think I think that really, as it happened, that particular phrase, maximum outcome, minimum output, well, minimum output is seen, or output is seen in this definition as the work, the amount of effort essentially expended, and outcome being the valuable benefit. What value was delivered in order to get this? So actually, that bit I take less issuance with. But here's the thing: the product owner is going to determine how the priority of things, and this is common. What decisions they're going to make. Oh, well, they're going to make decisions on the priority, i.e. how important is feature A over feature B, which one should we do first? But how does a product owner make these decisions? Well, when I ask audiences this question, I get a range of answers, but normally they say, well, the business tells them what to do. The business? What's the business? The business, you mean the whole organization they work for collectively tells them what is important? No, they mean the business, because obviously the business is apparently separate from the technology team that's within the business. I don't know. To me, that doesn't make any sense at all. The business, the organization, you are one organization, most likely. So what they mean, maybe that the customer, well, the customer, I'm talking about an internal team here, clearly, as opposed to an agency customer. But the customer tells them that. So let's say the customer is, I know, their manager. Okay, well, how does their manager know what to do? How do they know what is most important? How do they know how to make those decisions? Oh, I don't know. That could be the CEO of the company. They're guided by strategy. The organizational strategy tells them what way to go. Well, how was the strategy come up with? How do we know that's the right strategy? And I can keep trolling. But in reality, this is a really important question, because you know what happens when I keep asking an audience, how do we know? How do you know? How do you know that's the right decision? Eventually, people go, and I can tell you, I imagine, but there is a really dreadful correlation between wind direction and successful organizational strategy. This is not a valid thing. There is no strong correlation here. It doesn't work. Wind direction isn't the ideal option. Neither is flipping a coin or any other form of vaguely random direction selection. The reality is most organizations are not using any form of sane customer directed decision making process. So what would that mean? Well, we've probably all heard the phrase user experience these days, or UX. Well, UX research, as it's called, is a foundational concept. Well, I gave this talk last year before, to a room full of about 500 people. And in that room, and this is typical when I give this session, I will only expect to see, when I say is user experience the guiding light, is asking the customer what they want, what they think is important, whether or not you solved their problem. What problems do you have? If talking to the customer is that actually your guiding light? Is that your true north for specifying your product direction and strategy? I only see a handful of hands go up. And I think that's pretty common. I can't see all of you. I'm hoping maybe some of you are throwing your hands up, screaming at the screen, saying, we do UX in our company. It's a brilliant idea. I hope that's happening. So determine whether a product backlog item was satisfactorily delivered. Well, what does that mean? What does satisfactorily delivered mean? Delivered to spec? Does it meet the acceptance criteria? What is the definition of success for a project? Well, if you got my vibe from the previous bullet point, well, interesting. Maybe we should ask the customer if the thing that we delivered solves their problem. Maybe we should do that. But again, many organizations don't. This talk is not about user experience, but in reality, these things are naturally entwined, because as a product owner, you are making the decision as to what direction you should take your product in. And if that's not driven by customer need and customer communication, then I have no idea how else you could possibly be driving that. Ensure transparency into the upcoming work of the product development team. Oh, this is a fun one. So I often ask this. I don't really understand this. So previously, we looked at that earlier definition. We identified that by the definition, it says that the product owner is on the team, and the team collectively are going to they desire to take the product in a particular direction. So they're going to drive the product forward. They're going to decide the goals collaboratively. Well, if ensure transparency into the upcoming work, I'm guessing upcoming work is the backlog, because I'm not sure where else the work would be. Well, if we're going to ensure transparency into the upcoming work, well, surely the backlog and the contents of the backlog was defined and agreed collaboratively with the team. So why would you need to ensure transparency of that? Isn't it already transparent? Isn't it already available? And then I've had this conversation, which goes something along the lines of, product owner, well, I mean, I wouldn't want the team to see everything. I mean, they would just get distracted. Right? Distracted. What do you mean by distracted? Well, I mean, if they could see like 6 months of work, I mean, I've got that in my pipeline. I mean, they're all on my desk in cards. They're all in Jira. All 25,000 of these stories, they're all in Jira. We've got plans for years. But if they could see them, they would just start developing stuff. They would just start just randomly pick something from the bottom of the list. Yeah, because some of that stuff is more fun, maybe. Oh, really? So you think the engineers? I mean, have you ever seen that? Has anyone ever seen that? Ever seen an engineer just randomly start working on something literally at the bottom of the backlog because it seemed like it was more entertaining? Well, I don't know. I've definitely seen engineers prioritize things that might be more challenging or more interesting to work on. But rarely do you ever see massive changes in priority taken by a team member. It happens, but that you've got separate challenges there. This isn't just a symptom of an engineer. Engineers don't just randomly start working on whatever the hell they want, just because it seemed interesting. And then that's the other kind of the other question here is that in reality, whenever I've seen situations with apparent priority problems, oh, why are they working on that? That's not important, those kinds of issues. Well, in reality, those issues, really, most of those problems are, no one has any idea what the priority is anyway. Nobody really knows what's the most important thing, because the most important thing is normally whichever thing the product owner has most recently been shouted at about by their customer or his manager or something else. And that could change by the hour depending on what company you're working in. So how do we know what to do? Or another way of putting it, where does the work come from? And as we were saying before, we really often, in many organizations, are still essentially guessing. We guess as to what's most important. A fun one when they're not using the customer, a fun answer I get when I say, how do we know what to do? How do we know what's most important? Is, oh, we follow our competitors. Well, I like that. I like that idea because obviously every organization in the world, key, recommended, top up their business strategy is to be just that little bit behind all of your competitors, because that's going to be great. Who needs innovation? We want to be just there. We're happy with that position. Maybe some advantages to that. Who knows? So really, when we are looking at how we know what to do, most of the time, if we're not going to the customer directly and saying what's working, what isn't, what do you need, then we're often not great at knowing what to do. In fact, we're really pretty useless. This is a little taken from a study called Exceeding Value from an organization called the Standish Group, who also make a thing called the Chaos Study that people might have heard referred to before. The interesting thing here is, if you can see the the chart, what this tells us, and what they were looking at was, I think about 1,000 organizations, and they were looking specifically at software created, kind of internal bespoke software, so custom order management systems and the like. So bespoke software delivered to large organizations. And what they were doing was comparing the original, the features that the engineering teams believed they delivered with the features that the people that use the software every day, the things they use. So they'd say, how are you using this software? Oh, I do this and I do this and I do this. And what features do you not use but are aware of? Essentially, how often do you use those things? And what was interesting was that it's a really, really difficult thing to measure. So we can assume a really high error margin on this data because it's pretty difficult to measure these things effectively. But even taken with a high error margin, 80% of delivered features hardly ever or infrequently used. That's a pretty stark judgment on the software industry's ability to just know what our customers want without talking to them. So this is all pretty depressing. What can we do to improve this? What can we do? Well, the most important thing is, but I'm not going to tell you yet. We're going to leave you hanging there. And what I'd like to do is jump back to the about a century ago. This guy is a guy called Frederick Winslow Taylor, who many will have heard of. Certainly, if you took did any kind of MBA or anything like that. So this guy is an early 20th century humanitarian. This is a little quote. He's known for the high regard in which he held his workers. The ordinary pig iron handler is not the type of man well suited to shoveling. He is too stupid. There is too much mental strain, too much knack required of a shoveler. All right, so he's not a humanitarian. But he was more. He was a scientist, and he was more than the inspiration for traditional management everywhere. What we tend to forget, or perhaps ignore, is that Taylor was actually one of the first people to really popularize the empirical method in business. So what did Taylor do? Let's have a look. So Taylor was working in a metalworking factory, roughly at the turn of the century. And he wanted to improve efficiency. So he started by breaking down every process into its component parts. So if you imagine a metalworking factory, they're going to be producing whatever, like sheet metal or nuts and bolts, or let's say metal doors for the sake of example. And there's going to be a process like melt the shovel the coal into the pig iron, into the furnace, melt down the pig iron, etc., etc. Okay. And a particular area that he had in his tome of greatness, his books on scientific management, as he called it, he focused a lot on shoveling. So he broke down the process into its component parts. And then what he did was he went around the factory floor and he measured everything to a hundredth of a minute. So how long does it take each of the stations? And obviously they're not just one pig iron shoveler in a factory. There could be a number of them. So he looked at each one and he timed every single one. This is what actually referred to as a time and motion study. So he measured all the different stations across the floor, and worked out what the timing was. But to his horror, there was massive inconsistency across the factory floor. Each of the workers were doing the same jobs, but differently. I mean, would you believe it? They considered themselves to be craftsmen. I mean, for goodness sakes, craftsmen. And each of them had their own approach and style of work that was handed down by their granddad, who used their granddad's ways, who used their dad's ways. And some used different tools. Some used a variation on the process. So you've got Bob over here who likes to shovel the pig iron like just with his arms like this, just like that. And then you've got Mike, who uses the shovel that his mum gave him for Christmas. And then you've got Bob, who kind of uses two trowels and does like a double troweling action. Well, that's great, but there was such variation. So his idea was to identify the one true way for each process, the most efficient, empirically demonstrated, most efficient method, which he would discover and then dictate to the workers and show them the right way to do it. Why would they possibly want to do it the wrong way? So how did he discover the one true way? Well, we've got so what did he know? He looked at what he knew currently. What do we know currently about the thing? Okay, well, we've got Bob doing it that way and Mike doing it that way. Okay, well, he then formed a hypothesis. Okay, that hypothesis might be, maybe if I make a small change, maybe it seems that Mike, with the shovel his mum gave him for Christmas, is better than the others, a bit quicker. So what if they all used that shovel instead? What if they all did it that way? So he then made a small change, and he would insist that the workers do it in that particular way in an experiment. And you go around and time everyone again. And this is him testing that hypothesis. This then demonstrates the validity of that hypothesis, which produces learning, which he learns from. Now, what's interesting is, and really important here, is that sometimes this invalidated his hypothesis. Sometimes it proved that actually he was wrong. They weren't any quicker when using Mike's mum's shovel. But either way, there was learning. And this new information is fed back to make more hypotheses. And the cycle continues. And this is a thing known as continuous learning. This created an environment of continuous learning, which is a catchphrase for the modern world. But interestingly, in Taylor's situation, this led to drastically increased efficiency because there was this continuous cycle of improvement. We talk about things like continuous improvement, and these are phrases, again, modern catchphrases, but this started here. Now, on the other hand, he also triggered a whole number of workers' strikes, the more experienced workers feeling that they lost their individual style and expression, which he was obviously suppressing. This environment of continuous learning that he'd created was limited to the upper echelons of the organization. The only people, in Taylor's view, with, I quote, the mental capacity for this planning work. But then again, he did see dramatically increased efficiency. So what was he missing? He seemed to be on the right track, but he was missing something. So let's fast forward a few decades and find out. So at about the same time that Aretha Franklin was singing this classic, on the other side of the Pacific, there was another movement underway. So this guy is a chap called Taiichi Ohno. And between 1948 and 1975, him and E.G. Toyoda developed the Toyota production system, which later became lean manufacturing in the US and eventually led on to lean software engineering, as many people will be familiar with. Now, he had a somewhat different attitude to workers than our friend Taylor. This is a nice quote from him. People don't go to Toyota to work. They go there to think. So I guess he imagined that his workers had some mental capacity. So in 2001, Toyota wrapped up its philosophy and values and manufacturing ideals into what it called the Toyota Way. And there are 14 principles grouped into 2 key areas. Now, this talk isn't about Toyota or lean principles for that matter, and I'm not going to go into everything here, but I really highly recommend that you do. If you search for the Toyota Way, you can find this online. The Wikipedia page for it's excellent. There's a bunch of material and fantastic material available through Toyota. All of this stuff is open and available. What I normally do at this point, but really struggled to get the audio to work effectively over Zoom, was the I'm just checking. Oh, there we go. Sorry, my picture, my little monitor froze for a second there. I wasn't sure if you could still hear me or see me for that matter. So the what I normally do is play a video at this point, but I really struggled to get that to work through Zoom effectively. So we're going to go into it separately on each point. So what is the Toyota Way? As I said, it breaks down into 14 principles that are grouped into 2 key areas, what they call their pillars. The 2 pillars of the Toyota Way are continuous improvement and respect for people. Needless to say, maybe one of those is perhaps what Taylor might have been missing. So continuous improvement, this is their constant effort to improve their process and reduce waste. They achieve this in a number of ways, and some ways seem familiar from our earlier exploration of Taylor. So become a learning organization with Hansai, which is known as reflection, and Kaizen. The process of becoming a learning organization involves criticizing every aspect of what one does. Nothing is sacred. They constantly reflect on practice and look into ways of improving their approach. They have a well-known suggestion system at Toyota, which is a good example of this kind of continuous improvement process. And the Toyotas are encouraged to make suggestions to reduce waste or improve quality. They're actually asked the question, what is the smallest thing you could do today that improves the way you work? Now, Toyota, last time I checked, have roughly 300,000 employees worldwide, and they've been running this system since the 70s. Amazingly, Toyota get 1 million suggestions year on year, which is incredible. And what's more is that I mean, think about that. That's like 3 roughly per user, so per employee on average. And what's incredible is that over 90% of those ideas are actually implemented on an annual basis. And one of the reasons for that is that Toyota, as they describe it, they encourage action over overthinking, basically, or hopefully a combination of the two. But essentially, don't just tell me that you have a good idea, go and do it. The employees and the people on the floor are empowered to implement those ideas. This is because they respect their frontline staff as the most qualified people in the organization to make those suggestions. So Nemawashi, building consensus. So when problems are discovered, they have this simple process that they follow. They head straight to the place of the problem to see what's going on. Now, at Toyota, this is normally seen when an employee pulls what's called the andon cord. So the andon cord is normally a stripy yellow and black rope that runs all the way above all of the stations in the factory. And if you're working and you notice a problem, you notice a quality problem, you notice an issue, you reach up and pull this cord, and you literally stop the whole line. And that sets off an alert, which then allows everyone to kind of focus in and know exactly where the problem is. They're then going to have a conversation. So normally, because the line has stopped, everyone gathers around and they have a conversation to try and identify what the underlying cause is. They consider a broad range of alternatives by pulling in other staff if they need to. The line is stopped, so everyone can focus, obviously. And they then build consensus on a particular problem, on a particular potential idea for how to fix this, or an experiment they're going to try. And what's really important here is they don't just come up with an idea of like what they're going to do, but in each case they have to discuss, how will they know it's done? What's the end game? How do I know that that thing that I want to improve, that quality problem, is fixed? Is it as simple as, well, a machine will switch on again? Or is it something more nuanced, like a performance change? I think we can improve the performance on this, this station by 10%. How do we measure that? After taking the time to come up with a proposed solution, they always go for the thing. They go and do it quickly. They get in there fast and get the line back up and running. And then once there is consensus around that solution, it is then built into what they call standardized work. So, wait a sec. Let's go back. Well, I'm going to talk about standardized work while that little joyous animation plays out. So what's amazing about this is standardized work. Well, that sounds a lot like Taylor. Standardized work sounds a lot like what Taylor is doing and talking about, because actually it's a really good idea for workers at different stations to work in similar ways. It doesn't make sense for all of the workers to work in different ways. It doesn't make sense in software for us to do things in 1,000 different ways. We support and use things like, coding styles, linters, all of these tools which essentially help us work in consistent ways, because there is benefit in doing that. But standardized work is actually seen as, so I'm seeing if I actually have, slide's gone missing. There we go. Standardized work at Toyota is actually seen as an empowering tool. This is not a way of working which is dictated to the employees. It's a record of the consensus. It's a record of how we are working collectively, not a diktat to tell them how to work. And standardized work at Toyota is absolutely foundational. So in this case, we've got a little factory scene here. stuff's been working. And if you notice behind me, the line suddenly stopped because this dude here, fun trying to point at things in a green screen, this dude here noticed that it was that there was a quality problem. There seems to be a little notch in his box. So as a result, his manager, they wear wheelies, as I think they're called, glides over to and says, "What's up?" They then look at that, and they have some ideas on what that might be. But actually, what's going to happen here is the manager is going to be questioning the employee, because they come at this problem from different perspectives. The manager has this big picture view. The employee is the expert of his station. So they're going to have this conversation. Well, what do you think it might be? Well, I think it could be that. Are you sure it could be that? I think that probably looked okay. And that's because they have those different perspectives. Which point maybe they decide it might be Jenny's fault over here. So they come over to Jenny and they say, "What's up? It seems like there's this little dent in the in the box that's going downstream." And they all look at the thing together. "Oh well, look, actually, there's the problem right there." At that point, they come up with an idea. How are we going to fix this? How are we going to stop this from happening again? How are we going to improve quality right here? And then they continue. That goes into any changes to the ways they need to work, go into their standardized work. So now they've found a potential source of the problem. The manager asks, "Yeah, what can we do about this?" And there we go, standardized work. So actually the standardized tasks and processes, as they describe them as the foundation for continuous improvement and employee empowerment. So they talk about this relationship between the manager and the employee as a core thing, this mutual respect. I respect, as the manager, your close-up knowledge and ability and dedication to solve the problem. And as a team member, I respect as the manager to the manager, I respect your big picture perspective that allows you to ask the tough questions that guide me to a solution. So if you didn't get it already, I said that there was a superpower. I said the top thing, the thing that we really need to do, and I didn't tell you what it was. Well, unsurprisingly, we need to collaborate. We have to work together. So let's tie this together. Let's think about how we might make product ownership less of a one-man show or a one-person show. So you start by bringing a hypothesis to your team, an idea that might solve the problem or bring you closer to a goal. The team's job is to figure out the simplest way, the minimum output, to validate or invalidate this hypothesis. And they do this with an experiment. This provides learning, and that learning is the outcome. The team have not failed if they invalidate the hypothesis. Learning is the outcome here, and learning will always get you closer to your goal. Knowing what doesn't work is just as important as knowing what does. As you learn more, you'll be able to have more certainty in your hypothesis, or as the scientific community call it, consensus. So you build a consensus around product knowledge as a whole team collectively. No one becomes the one source of knowledge. The knowledge is distributed collectively around the team. So with that inspiration in mind, I created my own pillars of collaborative product ownership. Pillar 1, respect people. You respect people. Don't bring your team solutions to implement as a product owner. Show them that you respect their ability to solve the problems you bring them. It's literally their job. Embrace uncertainty. Don't bring them solutions. Bringing someone a solution is fake certainty. Bringing a solution is saying that we already know how to solve this problem. Well, you know what? In reality, you probably don't. You think you know how you have a solution. You think you know how to solve this problem, but you don't have a solution until it's solved. And what's worse is creating fake certainty around around a thing, around a potential solution to a problem. That fake certainty not only increases the risk because we don't actually accept the inherent uncertainty that's right in front of us, but also it reduces the opportunity for serendipity because we pretend we know everything. We're not looking for the other directions, for the opportunities. And those opportunities might be just what give your product the edge in a competitive marketplace. So how do we overcome the uncertainty? Well, we accept that there is uncertainty. We accept we don't know. And we use small experiments working with the team that will gradually build a shared understanding of the problem space throughout the team. And then continuous learning. With every experiment brings us learning, even if it invalidates a theory. And learning will always move you towards your goal, even when it seems you haven't moved. Shutting down all of the paths that you don't want to go down is as important, if not more important, in many cases, than just finding the right one all the time. And then no complacency. Allow consensus to build naturally across the team, but ensure it is safe to question everything, even the things that seem certain, especially the things that seem certain. Don't get complacent. So product owners can respect the people on a team by collaborating with them on solving problems and embracing the uncertainty of reality. Teams can overcome uncertainty with small experiments to test their hypotheses, which leads to continuous learning and builds consensus on the validity or invalidity of a theory. But no team should ever be complacent with the present state of understanding, and it should always be safe to question anything, however certain it might seem. So at the beginning, we had a little chat about the single wringable neck, the one throat to choke. You see, in a team where everyone is the product owner, in a team where decisions are made by consensus, collaboratively, based on a shared understanding of the strategy and direction, in those teams, everyone is a member of the team. It's easier to be a team member. It's easier to collaborate. It's easier to work with everyone when everyone is taking responsibility themselves and no one is being made accountable. So to the product owners out there that are thinking about maybe moving to becoming more collaborative, what I say to you is welcome to the team. And with that, I thank you very much for your time. And I think there's probably about, am I right, 5 minutes left for any questions if people have them. I'll see if I can pull up the chat if people want to ask. I can see the chat now, so people want to use the chat in Zoom, or can I don't know if they can send questions to through to someone who can ask me them. I know people are looking on YouTube and other places. Slack, yes, Slack. I can't see. I can only see. Oh yeah, I'll go to Slack. I'll pull up the Slack channel. Wait, let's see. Are there questions in Slack that you can see? I just have to use it on my phone. Apologies. Let's have a look. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Oh, well, I can cope with that. Thank you very much. Do feel free. We've got like, I don't mind standing here. I could stand here just really stony faced for a few minutes and see if questions appear in the thing. You're more than welcome. I will hang around in the Slack channel and around in Slack generally throughout the day and throughout the next few days. So feel free to hit me up on there and ask me any questions. You can. Oh, there is. Is there? Oh, in the chat, in the other chat. Ah, there we go. The product owners not usually come from IT or the departments we make software for. Well, okay, well, depends on how you see how you're organizing your organization, because we tend to have this kind of weird thing. I think I highlighted that earlier in the talk. The IT teams say, oh, the business, there's the business, and then there's IT, as if somehow they are divorced of one another. My feeling would be that the product owner is a team member. Okay, so they are a team member and they are part of the team. They're not they shouldn't be ideally separate to they are separate from the customer. There's nothing wrong with having an actual customer, like an actual person from those teams embedded on your team as well, who's responsible for as an additional SME and someone there. But the product owner is normally somebody on the team. Now, I would advocate that there isn't someone with the title product owner on your team at all, actually. I would say that the role is best filled by individuals who perhaps you might call SMEs, subject matter experts, people that really know the space. A good example of that was I worked for a number of companies in the kind of finance sector. One was a company that was producing an app that allowed you to see like what your current pension value, the value of your pension plan was, and like the estimated amount and how much you could save, and update it all. Now, all of that stuff that's obviously really very domain specific. Like, unless you're in that field of finance, many engineers aren't, you don't necessarily know how to make those things. So having a good SME there who could advise and work with the engineers on getting the calculations right and things is obviously critical. And they were also the product owner. So there's an example of like a role, like a good role of somebody with expert knowledge. But I would say that normally the product owner is someone on the team, is a team member within your traditional IT organization, if that's what you've got. But ideally, your organizations are not necessarily structured around those functional boundaries. So you'll end up, so they're not kind of structured around that. All right, we have a minute left. I'll happily stand here for a minute. Yeah, absolutely, no problem. All right then. Well, thank you very much again. Feel free to hit me up in any channel you find. I'm relatively Googleable, so you can harass me online if I've said something offensive. Thank you very much.